Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cantina Club. We're going to go talk more about Game of Thrones this week. We've got episode 2 of season 8, where a lot more interesting setup happened, which we will jump into right after this and the turkey leg.
No one has died in a long, long time. No one has died in a whole season. And what the is going on?
Oh, I like that
What the
self-censorship.
is going on? What the is going?
All right, so welcome back. We're just going to jump right into our initial thoughts of episode 2, season 8, Game of Thrones. So let's start this time with Greedo. What were your
Oh, really?
yeah,
Grumpy Luke goes
just gonna
first.
mix it up. Yeah, Grumpy Luke's first.
Okay. Initial
Captain
thoughts.
Negative.
It's what we're here recording this on Tuesday night. We saw it Sunday night.
Yep.
I'm not remembering a whole heck of a lot about it, so I don't think it was all that memorable to me, which is a shame. Not to be Grumpy Luke or Captain Negative, but la la la, I'm Captain Negative. But no, it was really good. I remember, my overall impressions. It was really good. It is a little slow 2 episodes in this whole season. I know they're trying to set things up. I'm thinking there's going to be a heavy cost coming in this next episode, and that's why they're giving us so much time with these characters that we're not going to see again. However, that's it. That's all I got. It just wasn't. I liked it. So my overall impression is very positive. Don't take this wrong, Game of Thrones people, but I think the dialogue has suffered without. I don't know. I might eat my words because George R. Martin may have written this whole script. I don't know. I didn't pay attention, but the whole episode was dialogue. It seemed like mostly, and the dialogue just wasn't as snappy. It wasn't as engaging. It wasn't as clever as I remember the best of Game of Thrones. If I watch it again, I'm sure dialogue will jump out at me. But right now, I'm not remembering like a really memorable moment. And it comes back to a lot of it. The really clever characters, the ones that you just count on for the clever dialogue, are just kind of a little more flat these days. They're not really coming up with the really wonderful character moments with the dialogue that I expect. But in a way, this is like, part 2000 of a series. We know these characters, so we don't need as much out of them. And that's why I think everybody still has a positive feeling. If we were expecting this to deliver the goods, we'd probably be a little harsher on it because, frankly, the dialogue is a little flat. A lot of it is almost interchangeable. Like when you put the Hound with another character that's like the Hound with another character that's like the Hound, they end up sounding really similar, unless you have someone like Martin to really delineate and write the dialogue. Anyway, passing the torch.
Right. Okay,
Okay. I loved it. Captain Negative, I loved it.
Oh, you made me go first. I didn't want to go first.
No, I agree with you that the dialogue isn't as sharp as it was. The first 3 to 4 seasons were the best. But, and this was all conversations, basically. It's the night before the battle. And the thing I loved about it is that it, and I think I said this right after we watched it, it seemed like that last week was all of the reunions of friends coming together. And then this week was the enemies kind of making peace, so that you had a lot of people who had formerly been major enemies sitting down together the night before battle, knowing that tomorrow they were going to be fighting side by side and that they were probably all going to die together. And so I thought it was cool the two kind of bookended each other, the 2 episodes where you have reunions and then peacemaking. But it was kind of like an extension of the nights before all the big battles in the past episodes, like the Battle of Blackwater, I'm trying to think of something where the battle that Tyrion was in the first season. The night before they have a time of conversation that builds characters.
Yeah, they spend about 2 minutes on strategy for the battle, and then the rest of the time is people just thinking about what could happen next and what's happened to them before.
I loved it. I liked all the character interactions. Sure, the dialogue wasn't quite as sharp as in the past, but I'm thrilled that they are finally taking time to have characters. After this last season,
Right.
I cannot believe they had 2 episodes in a row. There was just conversations and relationships between characters. So I was not expecting that at all. I was really pleasantly surprised. And overall, I really enjoyed it. We can talk about specific character relationships in a little bit.
I want to amend my statement real quick. The two moments that I'm now remembering thinking about it was Sir Brienne of Tarth.
Oh,
That moment
yeah.
was incredible. And when Wiggleworm, whatever his name is, Stinky McPherson of Island Stinkwad showed up, and when he and
No idea what you're
Sansa
talking about right now.
saw each other. Was that in this episode or the one
Theon
before?
Greyjoy.
Yes, that
Theon,
was this one.
yeah. When Theon showed up, the Theon scenes were some of my favorite.
Wiggleworm.
Yeah.
And the Brienne, Theon and Brienne, kind of like Sam made last episode for me.
Yeah.
Theon and Brienne scenes.
Yeah.
But go ahead. I don't want to hog all this, so go ahead, Corellian.
Okay, Corellian.
I got to remember what I'm going to say in the next segment because I'm good at that. I forget.
Yeah, no, you want something up pretty good. I really like this episode. I was pretty surprised that we had yet a second episode of conversation and character. I don't necessarily call it character development. We've already developed these characters, but I liked the fact that like I think Gundark pretty much said it best, that we had one episode of reunion and one episode of basically putting aside different
Consequence of reunion.
Consequence of reunion is a good way to put it as well. But I like
or filler, as we call it in some areas of the world.
Captain Negative's land.
Well, you're going to spend $1 billion next week on an episode, so you just put the actors together and hope for the best and spend about $10 the week before. Sounds like a good plan to me. Sorry.
Exactly. So overall, though, I thought it was maybe a reason, not to necessarily make excuses, even though I am. Maybe the reason why it wasn't so snappy, as it were, dialogue wise, is because I kind of took that as the whole mood that you're gonna, not everybody's gonna be witty and snappy, a few hours before you're about to die. You think. But I thought it was kind of good for what it was. My favorite thing of the whole bit, I guess, ultimately, and we'll get into details, I know, but was just all of them sitting around that one room drinking wine where the knighting ceremony happened, and they're just kind of singing a song and talking, and it's mostly quiet, which is, I think, is very reflective in what the mood would actually be like for that type of a situation. But overall, again, I loved the episode. I thought it was another good one. I know all hell's about to break loose next week. We're basically going to have 82 minutes of slaughter. It's like Helm's Deep on steroids. I think we're going to hit the ground running next week after these first 2 episodes. So, okay, where would we like to go next? What sort of specifics you want to get into?
It started with Jaime Lannister's trial piece in the Great Hall at Winterfell. So what did you guys think about what happened with Jaime appearing before the Dragon Queen?
It was a lot quicker than I expected. I mean, based on the previews and stuff, you knew he wasn't gonna, no major consequences were gonna happen at that point. But I thought that I feared that was going to be a scene that they were going to really drag out and make it a much bigger portion of the episode. So I'm really glad they didn't. They just kind of got to it and got it done.
In the old days, it would have been a whole episode.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Kind of like Tyrion's
and it probably would have been better, frankly.
And other shows would have dragged that out.
It deserved to be dragged out.
Right.
Or fleshed out, however you want to look at it.
Right. No, very true. But I thought that the scene was, at least got it done. But I thought the best part of the whole scene, though, was after everything had been decided and how everybody just got up and walked out of the room. She's the queen. She's supposed to be the last one, and or the first one to move and to leave.
You're right.
But he waits on her. But Sansa just got up, walked out, and then meanwhile Jon's completely avoiding her now that he has his news. He took off, and she's just gonna wait. What?
I didn't even notice that. That's very telling.
It's Sansa and Jon who decided it. It's Sansa who stood up and said, when Brienne stood up and defended him, Sansa said, "Well, I take her word, and
good enough for me."
Yeah, and then Dany goes, "Well, what does the Warden of the North say to Jon?" Like, you're okay. And now John is left in the situation of his girl and his sister are at odds with each other.
And he's supposed to choose. Yeah.
Yeah. And he chooses, of course, like John always does, what he thinks is right, is that we need one more living body to fight the dead. You know, what did Danny think? And then Danny is like, okay, I'm screwed by all of you. So that's the one thing I liked about it, is that it undercut her power and her sense of herself. You know, it's that I think she's fallen into a world where she thought she was going to be in the big person in control. And she is beginning to realize that there are all kinds of relationships surrounding her that she has no idea what's going on. And she's kind of out in the cold on all of it.
Absolutely.
So I thought that
that's a good assessment. Yeah, that's very true.
Well, they've been dealing with their own struggles. They're not even among the characters that were paying attention to the fact. Some of the characters in Westeros knew about the Targaryens over in the other realms and were actively involved in those plots, but most of these people weren't aware of it. And so it really they feel like it has nothing to do with them. So
Greedo was saying when we were watching this is that he was worried that the Winterfell people didn't demand blood of Jaime, and why was Jaime forgiven so easily? Why didn't they demand that he at least be punished by going to the wall afterwards or taking the black or something?
That would have been the perfect solution.
Yeah, that would have been.
But okay.
According to the laws of the land.
There's not a wall anymore. And if the defense that will be up there at all will be the free folk. There's not, the whole situation at the wall is different now. There's not really a night's watch needed anymore.
Well, that's why you need one more than ever, because there is no wall. And the Night's Watch had been so relegated to just a place where you send the unwanted. Now, there is a reason for the Night's Watch. That it isn't, the people that were taking it seriously were correct.
Yeah, but I think that will be for the free folk to man, because for the longest time, the wall was intended to keep out the wildlings, when people didn't believe in the White Walkers anymore. And so I think that whole situation with the wall will change. And it is almost like it's a get out of jail free card now. It's like, how can you even think about what punishment you want for this dude when we know that the army is right outside our door that's going to kill us all? I think they kind of had to get through it quickly.
Well, that's when you name your price, though. Instead of just saying, good enough for me, he's in, this is when you lay it to him and say, look, you're in our power. And even though you're known as an oath breaker, you're claiming to have changed. We want your oath right now. This is what we demand as a price. Because he is your enemy. Make no mistake. He's the brother of the one who's usurped the throne, who plotted to murder every single Stark.
And who now lied to them.
Yeah, and who tortured Sansa and Arya. I mean, basically Sansa really badly. You just cannot forget, because of the threat sitting there. I mean, I know I've been saying nobody's reacting to the threat good enough. But I just found that part really underwhelming and ineffective. It was more of an exploration of the dynamic between the characters all brought together than it was any kind of true reckoning of what Jaime deserves or what Jaime would get and what Tyrion would get walking into Winterfell.
Right.
And then, of course, Theon shows up. So I was joking about it when we were watching. I was like, every usurper of Winterfell just about is showing up in one room, and nobody at Winterfell is doing anything about it. I just feel like they'd have a big, hangman party or a bonfire, and they'd throw them all on it.
But at the same time, these people are aware of the bigger picture. Maybe they are finally realize, okay, we've got these arguments with these people, but those are absolutely secondary to what's really going on right now, and maybe getting back to, like you even pointed out, Jon Snow's thinking, at least it's another body to try and help us win.
And also, let me say this: Greedo is so unwilling to forgive or forget, and I am too, with Jaime pushing Bran out the window. But you got to remember that nobody in that room knew it but Bran. Okay, nobody.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing.
Right. They made a plot point of that. He was, Bran held Jaime's fate in his hands.
So they don't know that he deliberately tried to kill a Stark.
No,
all they know is that he stabbed in the back the horrible king that burned the Stark people. So it may not be that hard to forgive him. And I don't know how well they know about the Red Wedding either, the role that Tywin played in setting up the Red Wedding. I don't know that that's common knowledge in Winterfell. So I'm not sure that, I think we're looking at it through the colored lens of, we saw him try to kill Bran Stark, and we have held that in our heads for 10 years now, you know.
No, I really take that out of the equation. I wasn't even thinking about that.
Okay.
And that's part of it for me as a viewer and as a reader of the books. I want Jaime still to pay for that. But if Bran can forgive him that, then I guess I have to, in a way, I have to move past it or whatever. In a way, just the threat and holding that power over him is a punishment for Jaime. So if Bran decides not to use it, but I really think we're in a position here where as soon as this battle is over, all bets are off. Whoever survives, like I would fully expect, like if Melisandre was there, I would expect Davos to just choke her out as soon as the battle's over. If she's looking the other way, I expect him to just stick a sword right through her. Same with Jaime. Jaime was on the battlefield like, oh, help me. You know, I expect a Stark bannerman to just go over and cut his throat as soon as they don't need him anymore.
And I get that's kind of the point I was making is like right now there's just a bigger picture, which is why we're not having all these recriminations and these, you know, hangings and, you know, let's burn him at the stake. It's like we don't have time. Like not to quote Bran, but we don't have time for this.
There's really only one bigger villain though left than Jaime, and that's Cersei. So you have the number 2 villain, unless I'm missing somebody. Right there. I mean, the Night King doesn't really count because he hasn't personally gone and confronted all these people. He's just a creature, but so far. But you got the number 2 villain in the land as far as the Northerners are concerned, and I just it rang hollow to me. It rang hollow to me like we're running out of time and we got to get all characters in one place. Which very tall order, very tough job. At least they addressed it. I'll give them credit for that. It just didn't fully work for me. It really, in moments like that, it still feels rushed to me. Like he didn't have to have an entire hour of him standing in front of people with them throwing stones at him, but it needed to have more repercussions than that. And then just slinking off and making continual jokes about, I guess we're going to die in Winterfell with a bunch of people who hate us. And that brings me to another point, is that I feel like these characters are far more compelling when they're adversaries. When you put them all together and they're suddenly just friendly and they're acting like soldiers, drinking and stuff, that's part of my complaint about the scenes not being as memorable to me personally, because the edge was gone. Jaime just seemed like completely humbled and like he had nothing left but good intentions, which I don't buy for a second. Like I said, as soon as the dust settles, if there's something in it for him, he'll be back to that same guy. It wasn't that long ago that he was doing horrible stuff.
I don't know that I'm buying that, but
I'm not either.
Did he shed a tear when his daughter was poisoned in front of him? Did he ever care about any of his kids that were murdered in this crusade? When he raped his sister on his dad's coffin or sarcophagus or whatever it was, when he killed the guy who hero worshipped him in the same. I mean, I know it's been a period of a few years, but his crimes have racked up. This guy is capable.
No, we're not saying he's innocent. We're not saying he's innocent and hasn't done anything wrong. We're just saying that, yes, time has passed and he has changed since then. It doesn't get rid of the crimes, but he is now a humbled person more so than he was before, where he wasn't at all before.
Whereas when he went to Brienne and he told her, I came to Winterfell to serve under your command. Yeah. He said those words, sir. That's why I came to Winterfell, is to serve under your command. He said, I don't have a hand. I'm not a very good fighter anymore.
The reason he really came is because his other options didn't work out. Because he could have gone with Bran at any point. He gave her a sword. He gave her a sword that, was a huge gift and said, go fulfill the oaths that I couldn't do or whatever. So that was great. He was evolving, but he could have walked away at any point. He kept trying to make his villainy work for him. And he's not the villain his father was. So he's not as good at it. He's a failure. And that's why
he kept trying to make his relationship with Cersei work. That's been his whole that's been his
weakness. Yeah.
It's been who he is, and he finally got out from under her thumb.
He's done plenty of crimes without Cersei around.
But it was always motivated by getting back to her. Every one of them. The boy that he killed.
That's a good point. That was still his motivation. Even when he killed the boy in the chain, in the cage. He was just trying to get out so he could get back to Cersei.
I don't buy that. If you go back to the first season, he was just for the sake of being one. And he ambushed Ned in the street. Did he do that to get back to Cersei? Was Ned blocking his way to Cersei? No, that was absolutely unnecessary. It was just douchebaggery of the highest order because he could do it.
Okay, again, we're not saying he's like innocent.
He was a douchebag.
And how long ago was it that he forced Cersei at their dad's funeral? This whole stuff has been in the last end run of the show.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's been that long because Tyrion was thrown out of Westeros, then came back. In the show, it's been only a couple of years. I mean, people are just flying across the planet at supersonic speeds. But it wasn't that long ago, really, honestly.
If we're thinking about his character, why don't we talk about the scene with him and Bran? Because we haven't talked about that yet. Because they get a scene after the trial.
You guys talk for a while because I feel like I'm going too much on the. But this is really a good discussion because Jaime is one of the core characters of the books and the show, and looking at the actor who plays him on the show, you can see why he's taken over a large role on the show. I mean, he is a star, and he's very compelling, very charismatic. You want to see more of him. But Martin made him that way in the books. Martin chose to make him a protagonist from one of the worst villains, which makes the character really interesting in the adaptation and in the original. So I enjoy talking about it, even though maybe we're belaboring the point here. I don't know. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, what about... You said that if Bran could forgive him, then maybe you ought to be able to.
For shoving him out the window.
Yeah. What do you make of the scene between him and Bran?
I do want to remind you that someone hired a guy and left a dagger behind to kill Bran in his bed. And we've always blamed Cersei for that. But do you really think she didn't tell Jaime or Jaime didn't know? There's no way to know. They're all plotting under the same banner. So he, like Tyrion said, you knew who she was. Don't kid yourself. So I hold him responsible for everything she did as well, that he allowed her to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, what was the question? I'm just saying he tried to kill Bran twice. Okay, twice. Just remember this guy.
What do you mean twice?
They plotted to kill him in his bed. They hired a guy and gave him a dagger.
No, he did not, Brian. That was Littlefinger.
He's loosely using the term "they."
It was Littlefinger's dagger, but I don't. Maybe I'm wrong, but I know. I think the Lannisters were behind
Greedo, that was Littlefinger who made it look like the Lannisters to start.
He made it look like it was Tyrion.
And the Starks. Hello.
Is this the same Littlefinger that, according to the show, just his brain dropped out his ass at one point, and he ended up being one of the stupidest guys around and getting his throat cut by a little girl? That Littlefinger?
That Littlefinger.
Okay, we won't even go there. That was last season. So the questions about Bran and Jaime, is that what you're saying? Like their scene? Yeah. I wanted to let you guys talk about that, but I loved that scene. Yeah, thought it was good.
Yeah, I thought it was great too. Corellian.
I have absolutely no quibbles with the actors or the chemistry when they're put together or anything like that. So, and those are Jaime's definitely. I can't even pronounce the guy's name, but that actor is one of the best on the show, in my opinion. You know, really a challenging part that he does so well with in every respect. So, yeah I like that scene. No complaints.
I love the scene too. I always like the setting. I don't always like scenes around the tree. I don't know why. I just think it's really picturesque and really cool. And I don't believe this line that I liked actually happened at that scene. I think it actually happened in the Great Hall, but where Bran made the comment, "The things we do for love."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because you knew that was going to come up.
That obviously that Jaime had said to him last thing he said before he pushed him out the window. I thought that was kind of a nice segue, which obviously made Jaime sweat.
I liked his delivery. I liked his delivery too because I was expecting it to be an accusation, and it was more of an actual defense.
Yeah.
The way he said it.
Right.
Bran said it.
And he repeated that when they met at the tree. Is that he said you were doing those things for your family.
Right. Yeah.
Or for your sister to protect your family.
Absolutely.
Your sister.
No, that's a really good point. Yeah, that he said that almost like he's almost defending Jaime for what he did to him.
And I think it's interesting when Jaime said, he apologized, and then he said, "I'm not the man I was."
That was so insincere.
He said, "I'm not the man I was," and Bran said,
sorry.
Well, what are you supposed to say?
The whole paralyzation thing.
He said, I'm not the man I was," and Bran said, you would still be if you hadn't pushed me out that window. I thought that was interesting.
That he basically set everything in motion by doing that.
You would still, that you would be the complete asshole that you were before if you had not
you wouldn't have created have created the road that you had to travel down by doing that.
I thought that was interesting.
It's too convenient for me, and I don't believe that. There's so many complicated things have happened, and the Lannisters and some of these characters were so villainous that their crimes could just fill a whole long parchment, and this is just one crime. I mean, which one do you want to remove from the...
I get it. The Lannisters
from
are
the stack?
You know,
Yeah.
they're horrendous at every level except for Tyrion, and even he has his horrible, qualities, his drinking and whoring, and his tendencies that he used to have in the earlier seasons. But that being said, I'm just not buying into what you're saying about Jaime at all. I feel like he has grown. I feel like he's truly humbled by what he's experienced, and I think he really is a different person.
Will you write him letters in prison?
I really will. Yeah, I will try and listen, so hopefully he'll choke me with a chain.
And one more comment about Jaime, and I'll stop. I swear to God. But when he defended himself by saying, "When that stuff happened, we were at war," it's like, no, you were not. That stuff happened to people who thought you were supposed to be an ally. You are scum, and you. Anyway, half the stuff they listed happened before they were at war. They were at war for those reasons. And your conspiracy to bang your sister and squeeze out a bunch of mongrel inbred pups is the whole reason the whole kingdom collapsed. And you conspired to kill the king, by the way. That's two you've got under your belt. How many more are you going to kill?
Next week on the Jaime Lannister
show. I wish I had been there.
What king did he conspire to kill?
Robert Baratheon. As well as, he deliberately killed the Mad King, which we'll give him credit for that one.
Okay.
That was addition by subtraction.
Right.
Why don't we, if we could go from Jaime to the better scene, maybe the scene where Jaime knights Brienne. Why don't we talk about?
Yeah, you guys talk. I'm sick of my own voice.
I loved that scene. I thought that was amazing. When he made the comment, it takes a knight. You don't need a king. A knight, any knight can make someone a knight, and that just kind of set it in motion. I just thought the way it was filmed was perfect, with her being kind of hesitant at first, because I'm sure that there was part of her that was holding back, hoping this wasn't a joke and that she wasn't going to be embarrassed, because she wants that so bad.
Yeah.
And then to see that it was legit, she went over, it happened, and everybody's reaction, Tormund in particular, just beside himself, excited.
And when he said, "What? You're not a knight?" and she said, "It's not tradition for a woman can't be knighted." And he's like, "F tradition." Like, oh yeah.
Yeah, he's from the wilds. What does he know about it?
Why are you not a knight?
Exactly. But yeah, I absolutely loved that scene. I thought that was one of the highlights of the whole show.
I thought so too. It was named after the title of the episode, "The Night of the Seven Kingdoms." And since we're mentioning that title, I don't know if you guys know. I know that Corellian is not a book reader for the series, but maybe Greedo has read these books. Have you read the Dunk and Egg stories that are under a collection called "The Night of the Seven Kingdoms"?
I haven't. I really need to, but I haven't.
That's the name of the collection of short, like, novellas.
The Hedge Knight and all that stuff.
Yes, about the Hedge Knight, Sir Duncan, and he is actually an ancestor of Brienne. And Sir Duncan the Tall. That's where Brienne gets her height. Sir Duncan the Tall.
Are they related to the Knights of the Shrubbery? Sorry, I couldn't resist. Me.
But I thought that was cool that they do a call back to book stuff, with the title of the episode, for people who read the stories. But I liked too that when, like Corellian said, it kind of started out as a joke, like they were joking about, well, why aren't you a knight? And then Jaime kind of had a joke in his voice when he said, well, anybody, any knight can make another knight. And then suddenly, and they all start looking at her, and he invites her over to kneel. And I like how all the men suddenly became solemn and began to gather around her, where it took on this kind of sacred moment, like making a real knight, maybe the one and only real knight in all of the Seven Kingdoms, the only one who's really noble.
Who really has the qualities, of a traditional knight. Absolutely.
Yeah, she's already fulfilled all the three things that he concluded in the oath or whatever. I mean, she already embodies all those things, so more so than anyone else.
Yeah, so why wasn't she a knight before?
Yeah.
And the fact that it's Jaime that does it, and here we're going to go back to Jaime, who had given up on chivalry from the beginning, thought it was all a scam, and that he sees somebody that could embody those things that he thought could not exist in that world. To me, that was also a moment where you see how he's transformed. That he is a knight who failed in everything, who was an asshole, who violated all his vows, and he feels that he can make a knight, or that he can acknowledge this woman who is the truth of all those things that he thought couldn't exist anymore. I thought that was an awesome.
And I think he sees that as another step towards redemption.
Yeah, and then he goes after that and offers to serve. He wants to serve with her. So I thought their relationship kind of came full circle with that. It was really cool. What about the drinking scene leading up to that?
I loved the moment where Tormund told the story about why he's called Giant's Bane.
Oh, yeah,
that was so bizarre and out of left field.
That was freaky.
and the poor guy, it's like this story always kills with the wildlings. I'm gonna kill with this story, and nobody knew what to do, and he was telling it.
Yeah, and they couldn't even get their heads wrapped around it.
I loved it because the whole episode had the same tone through the whole thing, and everyone seemed world weary. Everybody was keeping a persona on, from the Hound to everybody. Nobody really wanted to say, "I hope you don't get killed. I like you." Instead, everybody was kind of mean spirited and morose. And suddenly you got Tormund, who's sincere. He doesn't know how to be any other way.
Yeah,
and if he's grandstanding, it's because he believes it. He's not trying to fool anybody. This is what he actually is. And for him to tell such a bizarre story, it was such a weird twist, and it just got weirder as it went along. It was like a David Lynch Game of Thrones short thrown in the middle. And he really thought he killed. He thought, "Oh man, I impressed all of them," and they were all freaked out. Like, wow, we're from different worlds entirely.
You know what it sounded like to me as he was telling it? It sounded like an old Norse legend. It sounded like a myth. Like he has created a myth about himself that is real. That he believes that's real.
Right.
Well, the other people believed it and accepted it, and he held on to the name. So yeah. And who are we to doubt anything at this point? All the stories have come true. I don't believe you're Giant's Bane as I go out to feed the dragons. Or these undead icicle zombies.
Exactly, icicles. That was good. But the rest of the scene I thought was great. I mean, I liked just the little asides like. Brienne saying, "Oh, only half a cup. You need to be clear-headed for the battle." And meanwhile, like, "Yeah, okay." Overflowing. And then the song that Podrick sang, I thought was really good. I really enjoyed that. I thought that was well done.
I would have paid good money if they hadn't cut to a montage there, though. If they had just stuck with Podrick singing that song, that would have been amazing. It was so predictable to go to a montage. It really took me out of it.
You know what it
It really did. I'm sorry.
It reminded me of that montage with was it Pippin singing in Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, unfortunately, rang that bell. I think I even said to you, he started singing, and I said, "How long before they go to a montage?"
Yeah,
and it was as soon as I stopped saying it, they went to a montage. But it would have been so much more intimate if it had just held there and let him sing the song and watch people's reaction in the room.
Yeah,
I think I kind of agree with you there. But one thing about the song is I read afterwards, and Greedo, I don't know if you'll recognize this, is that it was a song that came from book 3 or 4, I think, from the books. It was mentioned several times in one of the books, but it never had lyrics. Martin never wrote lyrics for it. And so they created lyrics.
It was the Bear and the Maiden Fair, just in a minor key.
Yeah,
no, it wasn't.
Bear,
I don't know.
Fair and the Rains of Casimir are like the only 2 songs that anybody in Westeros knows until this song. Thank God.
Well, there was that one guy writing a bunch of new ones about Jaime buggering his sister, but then he got executed.
He got Cersei
or somebody. Right. So those didn't really take off after the initial section.
Let's think about some of the other relationships before we get to.
I do want to say something. I don't want to draw this out. I know we're trying to be quicker, but you guys talked about the knighting scene, and I really didn't say anything about it. And that has got to be one of my favorite scenes from the show ever. I mean, personally, and I haven't rewatched, so I know a lot of things would jump out at me that I would love that I had forgotten, or but from the stuff that I think is memorable that is stuck with me, I'm a big fan of medieval stuff.
Yeah.
And knights in particular. You know, when I was a kid, I knew all the names from of all the knights from Arthur's Round Table and everything from every different. And I can't tell you how many times I've been disappointed by knights in media and by the adaptation of classic literature and media. They just can't seem to ever get it right. Somebody comes in with their own stupid twists and interpretations. They just can't tell the straight story. So anytime there's a moment, you know, a shining moment, pun intended, for knights and stuff, I love it. And the just incredible significance of that scene. I love the way, Gundark, you described it, where these jaded men who have seen the worst of everything, and they really do think it's a joke, and they don't understand what it means to them, because they've had all this stuff their whole lives. They've had the possibility of being honored as a fighter, or being a noble lord, or being rich, or being whatever, or being respected. Just even Tyrion, you know, nobody really can say much to him because they're afraid of the Lannisters. For them to turn around and see that going down in that moment, it flips that switch where it becomes reality, and you suddenly see these shows, and like Game of Thrones, they always walk that line of making the characters a little too self-aware for their times, and almost like saying, it's a shame we're in medieval times where this would all be better. Well, for a second there, you saw the power of their traditions coming out. And you also saw that the fact that they were acknowledging that everything's been turned on its head and we're seeing something new. Yeah. And they didn't know what to make of it, but they knew it was significant and powerful. They knew not one of them could speak up against it, because this woman, they all know the quality of this woman, that she's earned it. And for Jaime, who's kind of a symbol of the worst, to be doing it, even though he was grandstanding a little, in my opinion, at the beginning, because they were all drunk and all that. But I think he really did understand the significance by, you know, when he realized what he was doing and when she accepted it. Yeah. And I think it was important that she had to kind of, you know, take the mantle on herself and be a participant, rather than it being a joke forced on her or whatever. But anyway, all I wanted to say was that's going to go down as one of my just favorite all-time scenes. It's the only one this season that really got to me. I mean, really got to me. I had a strong reaction to that. I could watch that again and again. It was just beautiful. So
I agree with you. And back in our review episode where we reviewed past seasons, I said that Brienne was one of my favorite all-time characters. I mean, she just embodies the ideal of the knight in a way you can believe. You know, in a way you can absolutely believe it's absolutely real. And that was just such a thrilling and fulfilling moment for to see that happen for her character. I mean, the way you described it was beautiful.
Well, she's a captain, and now she's a knight. So Captain Phasma and it was nice to see Captain Phasma actually do something for once.
Caribbean.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Before we talk about other things that happened that right the night before the battle, we hadn't talked about a couple of other meetings earlier, like around the time of the trial. What do you make of this scene where Sansa sat down with Daenerys after Sansa had stood up against Daenerys and acquitted Jaime? And then Daenerys came to visit her privately. It was like, get out of here, dude. I need to talk with this woman alone. Do you remember enough of their conversation?
Absolutely. There were a couple of things that I really took from that. One being that, I mean, I got to give props to Dany for actually stepping up and going to Sansa, you know, as she's, you know, the queen and she expects everyone to come to her. She actually took the initiative to go to Sansa. Now, granted, she had her own motives to do that. But by the end of the scene, it was going so well. And then by the end of the scene, we see the true colors come out again.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as Sansa makes that comment of, you know, we lost the North, we fought for it and took it back, and we promised we would never kneel before a king again. What about the North? And then all that happens then is just, I can't do that. You know, just by, without even saying it, just letting go of her hand tells all you need to know about her. I can't support that. She wants to be Lord, Queen, Mother of everything.
Exactly. You know, Dany won't give up that. And she told her even in that scene, my whole life, my goal has been to take back the Iron Throne, And she's never thought about what is she going to do with the people that she supposedly has to rule afterwards and their needs and the independence of these people who have been abused by the Iron Throne. You know, how can, if she really wants to break the wheel of that abuse, she needs to get rid of the Iron Throne and let those people have choice in ruling themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And here she's got people finally standing up to her and telling her that, and I don't think she can take it. So I think it's kind of another foreshadowing of the bad things that come after the fight with the Night King. The fact that the two women that we really admire as really strong and powerful, positive women in this show, that for a moment they seem like they connect. Whenever she says we're both women who have learned to rule despite the skepticism of the men around us, and they make that moment connections almost like, oh yes, and then no, Danny can't let go of that system of power.
That driving force she has. Yep.
Yeah, I thought that.
I don't. You guys are making me think about this because I saw it, and I saw the significance of the scene where she pulled her hand away, but I didn't put as much thought into it as you guys have, and this is making me worried now because that's the stuff you do when you're setting up a character to either learn their lesson and sacrifice themselves in that moment. They're giving you do this deliberately. You give the character a stumbling block, a place to go, and this is an ultimate place to go about ultimate power and what ultimate power does to people. There's nowhere else to go from there, usually except sacrifice yourself. Something. So I'm wondering now if you, Corellian, you might have called it. Maybe Sansa's going to end up on the Iron Throne. In order to, it's kind of one of those things where you may not want the power, but you have to take it so that someone else doesn't get it, who will abuse it. But if Sansa has to learn this lesson, what's it going to cost her? I mean, not Sansa, Dany. If Dany has to learn this lesson, what's it going to cost her, and when is she going to come to that realization? Which then makes me really question Sir Friendzone's survival as well, because she's going to have to lose a lot of stuff to come to that. To realize that she has to give up everything to protect what's left.
She's not going to realize it until she's dying.
But I'm still going to stick with my prediction that Dany lives. About that scene, was there anything anybody else want to say about that? Gundark, did you already say what you wanted?
Yeah, I've already.
I did not care for parts of that. I had a mixed reaction to that scene. Overall, fine and good, but it was like a lot of this stuff. It felt rushed. Like there's a lot more conversations to be had here, and they're literally playing upon every conversation's interrupted right at the crucial moment, so that we can't resolve. We have these misunderstandings left hanging. No one can reflect and come back with an honest answer, like they would, be forced to do. Instead, every conversation is interrupted right at the moment where we're going to leave it for later to be resolved. And
That's a good point.
but I will say, I don't want to go into this. I don't want to be that guy. But I did not care for. I understand why they did it, but I felt a lot of man hatred in that scene, and it was almost like they were comparing credibility by how bad their experiences with men have been.
With men,
and and I understand if there's ever been characters that deserve to bash on men, it's every single female in Game of Thrones.
In Game of Thrones, yeah.
But maybe I'm just overly sensitive, but I thought it was a little much. It was
let me address that, because I think what might be happening there is not that it's like a male bashing scene. This is what Corellian pointed out, is that Dany has her own agenda in going there. I think it was in part an agenda of trying to bond with a female so Dany can get what she wants.
Right.
Finding something they don't have much in common. She's trying to find
something.
Yes, because
Sansa's really been standoffish and cold.
And Sansa responded to that initially as manipulation. Dany said, "You're a smart woman, and you and I have learned how to rule despite the skepticism of men." And Sansa was like, "I'm skeptical of you, woman." So I didn't really sense that it was like a political agenda or male bashing. I sense more it was like this character is trying to do what she can to get this other character to bond with her, and that's the way that she sees this most obvious. And Sansa is too smart to fall for that. When she began to melt toward Dany was when Dany said, "I'm here in part because I love Jon. I care for your brother. I love Jon." And I thought initially I just wanted to take the Iron Throne, and look at me now. Now I'm here fighting for him and fighting for your people. How is it that I've manipulated him? Maybe my love for him is manipulating me. And that's when she began to melt toward her, because I think she saw that she was showing real feeling and some weakness, a sense of her own weakness. But she wasn't going to fall for that crap about it's just because we're women that we ought to automatically be buddies.
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't count. Nothing counts for much in this world except when the chips are down.
No.
Everybody, yeah.
Yeah, so I can see how you could read it that way, but I don't think that's quite what was
Well, I
happening.
haven't watched it again, but I just felt a little like maybe it went a little far with the easy target. It's an easy target right now to write into stuff, and it just I think overall I'm expecting a little more from the dialogue and the character interactions, and they're a little flat, and I see it again and again in some of these scenes. But the fact that there's so much behind all these characters now, it just makes it makes up for a lot of flaws.
Yeah. Well, why don't we? There was a scenes that you mentioned you liked with Theon, and this scene between Dany and Sansa ends with the introduction of Theon back into the Winterfell storyline, because Theon arrives, remember, and that's what interrupts the conversation is his arrival. What do you make of the connection between him and Sansa that's developed in those scenes?
I thought it was interesting. It's pretty complex, their relationship. Obviously, they grow up together, basically as stepbrother and sister.
And probably didn't care for each other much then.
Yeah.
Probably not. Yeah, but then
probably didn't think about each other much.
Yeah, exactly. They weren't blood related, and then obviously the horrible, despicable things he did, taking over Winterfell when they were weak, and now of course he's back trying to make amends. But I think part of it is they do have this common ground where they were both basically tormented by the same person. Ramsay Bolton. They both were his victims. So they do have that in common. Not that that's a strong bond, I'm saying, but they do have that in common. And just the fact that they have such a history since they were kids together. Again, maybe they weren't close, but as we all know, sometimes time still strengthens what makes things seem stronger than they really were at the time. So I think that they're kind of in that zone right now where they're still thinking, okay, I still feel a bond with you because I grew up with you. We are technically family, even though we're not blood family. So that's kind of the meaning I took out of that scene, is why they were connecting the way they were.
Yeah.
And then she definitely seemed sympathetic to him.
Before Greedo, I really want to hear since he liked the Theon scenes, what he thought about that. But let me say real quick what interested me about that scene is that Theon enters and interrupts that conversation between Sansa and Dany right at the point whenever Sansa has said, no, Winterfell is going to stand on its own. The North stands on its own. We're not going to bow to anyone again. And then enters Theon, the guy who usurped Winterfell, the first time. And what's interesting is that you got the two women standing in front of him, and one is the lady of the house that he was part of, and one is his new queen. Mm-hmm. And he already knew the queen and had made an agreement with her and his sister, that they were going to fight for the queen. And he acknowledges the queen first. But then when he asks to stay at Winterfell, he turns to Sansa. Mm-hmm. And he says, Lady Sansa, I want to fight for Winterfell. And Dany is she's off, almost out of the frame.
Yeah, pushed out of the frame.
She's watching this, and they come together like weeping, come together, and she's just like, this is a relationship she has no part of.
No, she has no idea what's going on.
Yeah, she doesn't know these people.
The woman who thought she's queen of all these people, and that they're all her pieces on her game board.
It's a minefield.
Yeah.
Because you see a knight who's pledged, basically a lord who pledged fealty to you, you think is ready to throw down everything on your cause, and you suddenly see he's more loyal to someone else because they have a common bond. Yeah. And you do not have a common bond with almost anyone except the people you imported with you.
Yeah.
That's
why I love that scene.
Yeah, and that's also why this is a side effect of everything being rushed last year, and for whatever reason, them cutting this show down from possibly 10 seasons to 8 or whatever we're on, 8 or 8. Are we on the 8th season? Yeah. You would have had a lot more time with Daenerys in Westeros for things to feel more organic and natural and stuff. But yeah, she's facing the consequences right now. Sometimes I wonder why she's there. Yeah. She's so out of place in Winterfell and stuff. I guess you could say because her dragon was killed by the Night King, she has skin in the game now, and a vendetta in the game now, and she can see how dangerous it is. But it's just part of the peril of trying to draw all these threads together and just throwing them all in the same. But That's one reason why you create a supervillain, is so that you can bring commonality and get people in the same place to oppose this supervillain.
Right.
But again, it is temporary, and I'll be very interested to see if we defeat the Night King in this next episode, and then the whole last three are about how everything comes apart or comes together once that threat is removed.
Yeah. What did you make? You mentioned that Theon's scenes were among your favorite. What did you like about Theon?
I just thought the actors knocked it out of the park. I don't, I didn't rewatch that stuff, and I know they jumped off a wall. They all jumped off the wall of Winterfell together into the snow.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember who supported who more in that stuff, but I remember Theon was Wormy McScratchbutt or whatever at that point. He had been renamed into what I'm Wormy McScratchbutt, come with me, I must get you out, or whatever. He was like Gollum at that point, basically. Theon, go, or whatever. But I do think the scene of them talking about men, and then Theon shows up and you see something you didn't expect, which there's a joyful reunion and maybe some kind of mutual need there.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about the evils of men, and you've brought up how Theon is the emasculated, virtuous male now. Is that what Sansa wants? Because she can't deal with the real article, or she admires what he's overcome and knows he can't harm her. I don't know.
Question. Yeah, that's an interesting.
Why is he the one? I know they went through this common trauma, and I really think it is a really powerful bond when you see that reaction they had to each other. But also, you put it in the perspective of this world where you travel for months off screen, and you never know if you're going to see someone again. Every time you part, it could be the last time. And so when you see someone, it's got to be like an incredibly powerful blow if you have any heart at all. So. But Sansa's reaction was the one I didn't expect. She really threw herself into his arms like this is a trusted person, and she wasn't there for the horrible stuff he pulled at Winterfell. But you know, all of her old childhood people that were still alive had to tell her about it and everything. But evidently, their common experiences trumped all that, and all is forgiven.
He's the person that she chose to spend the evening with before the arrival of the Night King, because it showed them later having their dinner together. Just the two of them together. So there's a special relationship there. What about Theon offering to be the defender of Bran when they had the war room meeting, and they make their strategy for placing Bran in the Godswood to draw out the Night King, and they say, we can't leave you there alone, and Theon says, no, you won't, I'll be with him. I thought whenever he said that, I thought, oh my God, that's where he's going to fall. He's gonna die.
I don't think he's going to, though. I don't think he's going to.
I hope not.
Yeah. But yeah, that is a perfect setup for that. There's no way Bran lives through this because he's too powerful. He could just sit there for a couple hours and look at everything and tell them the answers to everything. He can even see the future. So what's the point? He's like ultimate spoiler king. So he has to go. And I almost think there's got to be some truth to him being the villain, so that he carries on in the form of the villain, or where he's just going to sacrifice himself or be taken out.
Ascend into some spiritual plane or something.
Well, he's very much removing himself. He's letting other people make decisions. Like even at Jaime's trial, he didn't contribute. He let other people decide. And I think if they had condemned Jaime, I don't know that he would have said anything either. I think he's letting people make their own decisions, and because he knows he has the ultimate power of knowledge, and he is acknowledging that he respects people's free will or something. That's one way to write him out of the equation, to where like otherwise he'd just be telling them everything. There'd be no suspense in anything. He's letting things play out because he knows he almost knows too much. He can't exist. It would change the world entirely if you gave people all the information. They wouldn't make the same decisions. Things wouldn't happen. They wouldn't be human anymore.
Yeah, so maybe it will be Bran who will be going down next week. It'll be they're
going to have the dragons standing by somewhere to come into the god. I mean, isn't this a recipe for disaster? Fire, ice, wood, right in the middle, right in the heart and center.
The disaster for me coming up is the crypt. And if I had a nickel for every time someone in that episode said, "Oh yeah, they're going to be safe in the crypt."
Yeah, they're going to be safe in the crypt. They're going to be safe there. Let's go hide in the crypt. We'll be fine there.
Like, oh my God, please.
Yeah, just blatant
I did love the moment. I love the moment where Sir Davos is giving out soup the night before the battle.
Oh yeah,
And
and he has that little moment with the little girl.
yeah, she comes up to him with her burned face, and she says, "My brothers are soldiers, so I want to fight." And then Gilly talks her into coming into the crypt because we need someone to defend us in the crypt. And I'm like, God damn it, Gilly, you definitely gonna need someone to defend you in the crypt.
Yeah.
That child is going to be defending you there. Is what's gonna happen.
I think they put the kid in there as a callback to the girl with grayscale and obviously the Davos connection, but also it'll be easy to identify her when she's a zombie because she'll have the burned face. Because I definitely think that's going to happen. Yeah. I really expected at the end of this episode, when the Night King showed up, I thought he wouldn't show up in the field. I thought they would come through the crypt. I thought there's some passage there that the Night King knows about. But why Bran wouldn't warn them? Because he should know it too, if there is one. But I really expected everyone to flee to the crypt, and then all of a sudden, out of the shadows, here come the walkers, and the White Walkers. They just know to come in through there, and pretty much all your civilians that are hiding there are going to come out the other side zombies. They're going to be converted or whatever. So
that may yet happen, but I do think they're just dropping hints right and left about the crypt. So there's going to be major things go down in the crypt next week. What about the sword Sam giving his family's Valyrian steel sword to Ser Jorah?
Ser Jorah, yeah. That was an interesting scene. I enjoyed that as well. I mean, it was kind of, they had a little bit of the comedy aspect of it too, where he said, I can't even hold it up anyway. Sorry, I can actually use it. It's too heavy for me.
Most impractical butter knife ever.
But yeah, no, I enjoyed that scene. I thought that was good. I like seeing interaction between characters that we have seen for years but haven't seen each other on screen. I think that kind of stuff is really neat. I enjoyed that. Now, granted, obviously, he already cured him of his grace, so it's not the first time they've been on screen together, but very limited. I thought that was neat.
I can't wait to see Ser Jorah use it.
If
you remember him fighting in the arena, that was one of the coolest fights they ever did. I didn't know that guy could kick ass like that.
And when he fought the Dothraki, that was an awesome deal too.
You forget, you just think of him as Sir Friendzone. Yeah, please, Khaleesi, please. But he actually survived a lot and a badass fighter. I wonder if the years have gotten to him at all. I was wondering if he could lift that sword, but I look forward to seeing him kick some ass with that, and I hope he gets his moment with that, because again, I'm fond of knights. I like the whole knight concept, and as flawed as Ser Jorah is, he is a true knight in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
And as good as anyone can be at being a knight, because it's an impossible ideal. And so I look forward to that, and I also wanted to see Sam use that sword someday, as unlikely as that seems, but. For the conclusion we're building towards, it was pretty darn cool to hand Ser Jorah a weapon that we're gonna, see him use, and
I thought that was kind of
come full circle back to Westeros.
I thought that the whole idea about the sword that went to Jon instead of to him, it always disappointed me a little bit. I wanted Ser Jorah to get that back. And I feel like this kind of replacement.
That was a full-on medieval weapon too. That Sam handed him. I mean, it's like a two-hander.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the real deal. Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I love that.
Why don't we talk about the scene that has sparked so much commentary on social media? I can see.
What's that?
I didn't know about this. Ship. The Gendry Arya.
Oh, of course. What else have people got to talk about? We've spent an hour and we haven't even talked about it. People got to go straight
awkward.
To that.
Okay, what were you?
Super awkward.
You didn't like it, huh? You didn't like it.
I didn't know. It's not that I didn't like it. I mean, I thought it had its place, and it made logical sense what they were doing. But me as a viewer of the show, I found it awkward because I guess there's actually a meme about this already. I'll send it to you. You can put it on screen if you want. But it's like, yeah, we know she's like, the character's 18 at this point. The actress is 22, but in our heads, she's still first season Arya.
11 years old.
And she looks 14. Let's be honest.
She looks 14. Yeah, she still looks like she should be in like a freshman in high school.
Yeah.
So that to me was totally odd. Plus, just that setting is so out of place for that character.
I wanted Cersei to show up and say, "Have you bled?"
Yeah.
She did the sounds.
Like the songs.
Like,
again, mixed feelings about the scene. It's like I kind of sum it up. It's almost like watching my little sister have sex. It's like I don't want to see that. It's like you can imply it, but I don't need to see it.
Yeah, she's a harmless.
They really didn't show it,
she's
though.
still the little sister of the show. She's been the little sister, the person that Brienne, that the Hound, that they all tried to protect throughout the show, even though she could protect herself better than they ever could.
Right.
And so it is hard. We've known her since the character, I guess, was 10, I guess, when it started out. So we've known her since she was 10, and it is hard where you see an explicit scene like that. I had the same mixed reaction, and I'm gonna say this from having come from our last week's podcast episode where I said I was really shipping them. Like I'm not fond of shipping, but when I saw Gendry and Arya meet again and the sparks that you
just didn't know you were gonna get it this fast.
Yeah. That's the thing.
A little too much.
I thought that would be an after battle thing. Yeah.
A little too much. But I was just because they're the only young people relationship on the show that isn't marked by rape, incest, or prostitution. Okay,
It's actually a really good point. Yeah.
So
you have to have some young relationships on here because otherwise,
legit relationships, not counting Jon and Dany.
It's really happening. It has to be happening, so you can't just ignore it.
Yeah.
And when I saw them actually start to connect in the last episode, I thought, oh, there's a little bit of hope for like a normal, happy little romantic relationship between two characters that we care about who could get some pleasure out of that. And so I was really happy that they might actually get together. And they're the representatives of Stark and Baratheon houses. Their dads at the beginning of the series, the first episode, they were talking together, and was it Robert said, I've got a son, you got a daughter, and it's just two different sons and daughters.
Just different sons and daughters,
Yeah, so that's
really interesting.
That was thrilling too, but
I think Robert said something like, "Our houses need to be joined," and they will be. Yeah. And now they were.
I want those characters together, but the explicit nature of her stripping down, I did like how she controlled the scene, and how she was like, "Okay, tell me what you did with the red woman. How many women have you been with? Okay, well, I want to be able to experience this. So go lie down over there." She tells him to take his bloody pants off afterwards because he's like, "These are scars." And is taken aback by seeing her scars. And go ahead and take your bloody pants off. I'm not the red woman. I'm going to remove them for you. You got to do it yourself, dude. So I liked how she was assertive. That was in character to me. When she decides she wants to do something, she was never fearful of doing anything that she decided to do.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of cool. But
you got to
strip was just and going. They should have cut away earlier or something. I don't know. That was a little bit too much to me.
The show's always gone too far and had too much. I mean, they actually would have done more if they'd been consistent with the character of the show. Whether it was showing more nudity from Gendry or them actually doing it, or if it was consistent with the show, for them that's respectful because they are lewd.
Game of Thrones standards.
It's a very lewd show. Many times.
As opposed
it was
to being
only
just blatant
2 weeks ago that Bran had the threesome going on or whatever.
Yeah, it was last week.
It was just there for humor and exploitation, nothing else.
And I read an interview with Maisie Williams, the actress who plays Arya, who said that the showrunners came to her and said it was totally her decision as to how much they would show. And that she was really careful about it. She didn't want to be too explicit.
I read that same article. Yeah.
I guarantee you that wasn't her.
It was probably a bot.
Just like they did with Cersei in the Walk of Shame or whatever.
Yeah, it was probably a bot. But so let me end with one thing about that scene that I did kind of like about the explicit nature of it was when we saw her scars. I thought for a minute it was just going to be gratuitous, and then it focused on the scars, and that was the primary focus on her body then, and the shock on Gendry's face when he sees her scars. And that for a moment, it felt all of a sudden real poignant to me. It's like we're seeing a scarred girl who is now a woman who's made a decision. She's met this boy that she originally had a little bit of a crush on, that she wanted to be part of her family because she had told him, I could be your family.
Yeah, and so she said back in season 2 or whatever.
Yeah, now they met again as adults. They find each other attractive. And here you see how the horrible things she's gone through. And it's a moment where the two of them can have some kind of pleasure despite those horrible things. That moment got me, and that felt right. but the rest of it was kind of I don't know. It wasn't comfortable.
A little awkward.
Well,
yeah.
she's not a nun. I mean, and we can't expect her to stay the kid from season 1 or whatever. So it's not.
I get it.
If you're going to honestly tell the
in my
story,
head. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have no doubt that whole thing was coordinated with the actors involved and everything, and they did exactly what they wanted to do with that scene.
Yeah.
So I didn't really feel any. I didn't feel uncomfortable about it. I thought it was more to display, to remind us that Arya is not a child, and she's not even a young woman. She's nothing like nothing like a lady from that you've seen from the beginning of the show and stuff when they bother to show the typical ladies. Right. And she's seen everything. She's been in the worst underbelly of every situation, seen the underside of every society that they have around. She's seen all kinds of sex, all kinds of exploitation, all kinds of murder, people treated like garbage, thrown away. There's no way she would, that it's true to her character, I feel like.
Yeah, I think so too.
And also, I felt like there was, like you touched upon, they tried to turn it into a female empowerment moment. And it just so happens that it fits both the characters perfectly. Mm-hmm. So I didn't feel manipulated by the scene at all because I could see Gendry behaving that way. I could see her behaving that way. And so it wasn't a shoehorned, female empowerment moment. It made sense. And if you think about this season, as far as I know, every sex act that I can remember has been initiated by the women, or controlled by the women. Even Euron asked permission. He was being rejected until she turned it around and kind of used the situation to her advantage. Cersei, Bronn is the only throwback to, but those women didn't care. They even propositioned the mad scientist or whatever. So I think there's something being said, but the contrast is still there between love and sex on the southern part of the continent and the northern part, as embodied by these characters. And so we're seeing that these tribulations have, right this minute, have made these people better, that are, in this conflict right here. Whereas with Cersei and her camp, not so much. They're still the same old greed, manipulation, exploitation of each other. There's no exploitation going on of each other. Yeah. We saw genuine, heartfelt, or you could say Arya might be exploiting the situation, but she made it very plain. just like if you were a customer at her brothel, she asked all the same questions. And I did think it was funny that you didn't know what she was asking when she said, "How many women have you been with?" You think, is she going to say, "Oh, you've been with too many"? No, she wanted him to be with a lot.
Yeah.
Because she wanted an expert or someone as close to that as she could get. But I mean, she wasn't going to go do it with anybody. But she wanted him to have the knowledge that she didn't have. She wanted to learn from him. Mm-hmm. I did think the scene at the end where she's staring off into space was telling. Only time will tell if I interpreted that correctly, but I think she was entirely dissatisfied. You could say that she realized what she has to lose now, and so maybe she's melancholy or thinking maybe. True. You can't really start something when everything's coming to an end, and so maybe she's feeling bad about that. But I think maybe she's thinking like this whole thing's overrated.
We'll have to see then. And that would be kind of in character for her too.
I told you. I think she's going to throw him aside. I think she's just going to toss him aside. He's like the first. He was like, we had a bond, and they'll be friend. She'll be his friend, but he's gonna end up chasing after her,
right?
And it's gonna cost him everything and her nothing. So,
no,
she's definitely not gonna fall in love. Ain't happening.
Okay, that brings us to the big closer.
Oh, and you notice Gendry was unconscious. She was conscious. He was unconscious. Again, what you said about the little motions with Danny and Sansa tells you where they are. That one scene tells you where one's unconscious and out of the picture, and one's fully aware of what's going on. In the story. Okay, what were you saying?
Poor Gendry.
Yeah, poor Gendry. Most of his life he's been unconscious, I think.
Well, now we get to the big closer with Danny and Jon in the crypt, right before the arrival of the Night King. Unless there's anything else earlier than that you'd like to talk about. I think we covered all the high points.
Yeah.
No, I can't think of anything offhand.
What do you make of that final conversation?
What I kind of focused in on is the fact that, again, true colors on Dany, she didn't seem to give a second thought to, the incestual part of that revelation.
That's what blew my mind too.
All
I
she
thought
thought
she'd have been
about
like,
was the rightful heir to the throne. The rightful heir. That's all she cares about.
She'd be
And
like, I need water. I need to wash. I need
Yeah.
to wash. It was nothing like that.
right, absolutely. So that's honestly the main thing I took from that scene is just again her exposing her true colors, and
It's
that
ambition.
now,
Yeah.
and kind of to Greedo's point earlier, that's another scene that ended with an interruption. To be resolved later.
Right.
So we didn't really get any.
It's pretty
resolution.
obvious what they're doing. They're setting the table and then
Yeah.
they're putting it off for the big. And I think some of these stories will be resolved via conflict in this next episode.
Oh, I think
Some
so, too.
characters will meet their end resolving these questions,
Yeah.
but many will be left for afterwards. And we can already see who's going to survive this battle. I don't think this is the ultimate battle. I think it's coming after that somehow.
It's coming after
Golden Company or something. I don't know.
It will be with the dragons too, and I think having just read Fire and Blood, the past history of Westeros that Greedo gave me for Christmas, there's a whole story of big battle between the Targaryens called the Dance of the Dragons. It lasted a few years, where they all fought with the dragons, until there's like no dragon left standing. I think that's what's coming between Dany and Jon. And I think that's what they implied in ending on that note, that once they get through the Night King, they still have this crap to get through between the two of them. And what I think also is interesting is I was reading some commentary on this episode online afterwards, and there were as many people, just like you said, that Jon is interrupted. Their conversation's interrupted. Before Jon can say, well, I'm not interested in taking the throne. She says,
no.
Yeah.
He had his shot and he didn't say it.
I think he didn't on purpose. But there were all these commentators saying, well, it was interrupted before he could have said that. He was going to say it.
No, it was on purpose. Yeah. I waited. He had a breath there. I was waiting for him to say it. If he's not, that's the thing you lead with. You say, look, it's not so bad. I'm your superior in every way. And according to the bloodline, but I don't want it. It's fine. You can rule. You can
have it.
Yeah, he did not say that. And there's a reason he did not say that.
Yeah. And I think it's been pressed upon him by Sam and by Dany's own behavior that he may have a responsibility in this, to not just let Dany take the Iron Throne as she's had followed her whole life with this demand to do, that he may have to be the one to do it, whether he wants to or not. And so I wonder if that wasn't what held his tongue there at the last moment. So I think that already he's thinking about he's going to have to do it. I think he's already thinking there's this big barrier already developed between them.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a good note to end upon. Whereas I know maybe Greedo thought it was contrived or others.
It was contrived, but it was okay. But again, Jon is Jon, and whatever you want to say about him, he's already died 15 times, so he can't say his stupidity either saves him or protects him because he's died 15 freaking times. He's working on his 16th, 17th,
Yeah, he is.
because he's just too dumb to live. And what everybody has admonished him about, why can't you lie? Why can't you at least hold your tongue? Just stand in the background and look brooding like Ned did. When Ned had nothing good to say, he said nothing. Just shut your freaking mouth. You should have gone with that instinct of avoiding her if you're going to have that conversation the next time. You should say, wait till after the battle. You don't divide your ally right before the battle where she's thinking like, well, maybe if the dragon spits on him, when he's in the way, it's not the worst thing that can happen.
Maybe he'll fall off this battlement.
How many times have we seen in history and everything else where it's like, where's our allies? Where's our allies? We're holding. Where's our allies? They're supposed to come from the flank. Oh, they're late. Like the late Sir Walter Frey. I mean, you're putting so much in jeopardy. And Jon isn't just playing for his own stakes anymore. He's got to be bigger than this. And he's got to learn his honor is crap. And it's just weighing him down. And it's way past time to eject that crap and get rid of it.
But
So
now it's too late.
yeah,
It's already
I wonder
dangerous.
sometimes if he's living for Ned. You know, if he's just doing what Ned he thinks. You know, what WWND? What would Ned Stark
What
do?
would Ned do?
Yeah, and if he really hasn't confronted necessarily who
Well,
he is in these situations. But
do you know he kind of did what Ned did? Because who did Ned go to before he
oh,
went to
Ned went
Cersei?
and Ned was
He
just as
went to
dumb. Yeah.
Cersei. Yeah. He went to Cersei and told her, I know all about you. I'm giving you an opportunity to flee. And then she stabbed him in the back.
Yep.
You know, so.
Well, Ned found out this incredible secret, and he told everyone.
Yeah.
he sent a secret letter that should have gotten there before anyone else knew, but no, he went and told every freaking one. And he went to the King's Guard or whatever and said, "Oh, I need you guys to do this." And they went, "Okay, we'll do that." He trusted all the wrong people because he thought people had honor and they have none.
Yeah,
Nope.
Danny will have to get rid of Jon and Sam and Bran. Because
Who will the
told
dragons choose? I want to know who the dragons are going to choose,
Yeah.
because I really think there could be something to this. If Jon is truly the Elder Targaryen, do the dragons recognize that?
Yeah.
Is there some kind of
Right.
bond there in the blood, like when he's in battle and he's bleeding or something, and they can smell his blood? I mean, if it comes down to it, and she commands them to do something to him,
Will they be able to do it?
yeah, will both dragons do it? Will they fight? I mean,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of things that could go down here, and I don't really know exactly. I still think Jon will sacrifice himself in the end because he's just in love with his own death of being a martyr. He just wants to be a martyr so freaking bad. So I think someone will fulfill that for him, because otherwise it's a life of misery and duty for his whole life. He'll always be looking for a chance to die. I did want to say one thing before we wrap up. There was a line that struck me as really off, and it was a joke, so you can look at it both ways. But someone said somewhere in this episode where they're all drinking and joking, and they said, "We're all gonna die together, even though we've all fought the Starks and we've all, isn't it ironic?" And someone said, "At least we'll die with honor."
That was Brienne.
Brienne said that.
Mm-hmm. That was what.
I thought it was a man.
No, it was her. It was what precipitated her knighting.
Okay,
She
well,
said, "At least we'll die with
this-
honor," and they all would kind of scoff, and then they look at her and they start talking about.
all right.
she's
Well,
done.
I have an issue with this whitewashing of a lot of these characters, and it's a feeling more so than it is. I can't prove it. I can't point to evidence, but there's a feeling that I said out loud, I think, when they said that line, "At least we'll die with honor," I said, hasn't that been the point of this whole thing, is to avoid dying with honor? And only the fools die with honor, and honor brings you death. And you have all these characters who are the embodiment of the anti of that, actually being so morose and so, that they're actually starting to talk like that and believe in it. It didn't ring true to me. And I don't know. I'm losing my train of thought a little bit here because I had more examples, but there's this kind of thing where all these enemies are together and all these people who've done despicable things and they're all flawed and they're all human. It's not ringing true to me in a lot of ways. I expected to feel more with the interactions with the Hound, and it's almost like they're saying, we don't know what to do with the Hound now. He's just really become a morose, useless appendage, just waiting for the battle. And I don't know. And just to see these characters talking about honor and then when Jaime recited the Knight's Code, and you realize absolutely no one.
No one is fit into it.
Right. It's kind of sickening me a little that we've come this far to where I don't want to say, I'm not saying this 100% certainty, but it feels dumbed down or something. It just doesn't have the edge. And also, here we are 2 episodes in, and no one has died. And I am not. I've railed against people killing characters for no reason, so I'm fine with it. But almost feeling like there's going to be a happy ending here, where everybody goes off and lives in their own part of the kingdom, and every storyline has a bow on it. I'm starting to think there's going to be no sacrifice.
This is a problem that several critics that I've been reading online are having, and it's something that many have worried about since the beginning of this series. Because this series, what sets it apart from other medieval lore stories is that it subverts all of those ideals of the medieval period. And what critics have been complaining about, I read one of the critics on The Atlantic. You ought to read their review. They have 3 critics who talk about the show together. And one of them took exactly that approach and said, this episode seemed to me to be hardening these characters back into medieval cliches. Now we're redeemed and we're gonna die with honor, and all that. That now we're gonna be heroes again, rather than undercutting, showing the falsity of that whole ideal of heroism of the period.
Well, normally on the eve of a battle like this, someone would be plotting to open the side gate.
That is exactly
someone
what
would be
said.
someone with Tyrion or somebody would have gone into Winterfell's secret, gold chamber and been like, "How can I get this out of here and come out alive?" No one's doing that.
Yeah.
And in fact, people are stupidly delivering themselves into the hands of their enemies and expecting it all to work out just because, I was honest enough to show up and not try to hide. It's like this defies everything we know about this world in a way.
I can see the point of that. And this critic said that one thing that's telling about this episode is that Varys had no lines.
Right.
Varys, who was so scheming and he didn't have any role to play in this. So it's like they're all reverting back to the medieval ideal rather than what the show. I don't know how I feel about that, really. I loved this episode overall, and I felt like it was bringing story arcs to a close that felt right to me. I didn't feel like it really rang wrong. But I think it's going to have to be determined by the conclusion of the overall series as to whether or not it supports its subversion of the medieval lore that it's done before, or whether or not it just reverts to the happy ending bullcrap. To me, that's yet to be seen.
You almost want the Night King to show up and say, "I'm going to give you a choice. Bend the knee to me, and I'll spare this part of the Seven Kingdoms." To give them something to create the kind of conflict that we're used to seeing.
Yeah.
This show has always been, and the books have always been about the schemers and the underbelly and the people that actually make things work. And the knights are referred to as, you remember that time we had that awesome tournament and everybody fought? You don't usually see the tournament. They just refer to their great deeds in the past. Like, they're not happening now. It's crappy now. It was a time of peace. So all they did is scheme and work against each other. And then when war broke out, it's just ugly. It's kind of like that old concept of medieval war. We're going to tilt, but what we're actually going to do is all the armored knights are going to ride at the unarmored peasants. And our other knights from the other side are going to ride at our unarmored peasants. And when we have enough, we're going to call it a day. And nobody in any armor ever gets hurt. That's kind of how they used to conduct war. And anyway, that's all I'm saying is how far do you go before it becomes a betrayal of the heart of the show?
Yeah,
I almost want Jaime to have something sequestered away in that hand of his. So when it comes down the battlefield, he actually goes, "Yeah, I gotta take Cersei back something, or she'll never have me back." And he cuts somebody's head off or something. He betrayed. Somebody's got to come up with something here that makes me remember what the show's actually about.
See, the show's been an anti-Tolkien, and now it may be becoming Tolkien.
But what are people supposed to do when the legends show up? That's always been the conflict. The journey is better than the destination. Martin was the same way. He just sprinkled in the whites and all this stuff, and always reminded you back again, like the grimy, the reality that these characters were living in and stuff. And I don't know. It just. But really? You know what?
Are you thinking that it's degenerating it?
He's never read the books, so he really doesn't know in a certain degree what I'm talking about.
Do you feel it's overall right where they're going to end the show? Do you feel like it's going to end?
I don't think it's going to end with a bow on it. No, I mean, right. I think certain aspects of it will, but I think definitely there's going to be a lot more deaths. It's not going to be like what Greedo was fearing. That
they could deliver some of the ultimate shockers of all time.
They're going to live in their own separate area, and everybody's going to sing Kumbaya. I don't think that's going to happen at all. I think we kind of talked about it on our preview episode. I think there will be a clear winner on the throne. I think John's going to go rule the North. Danny's going to be dead. I think there's going to be I think it's going to be almost like a 50-50 people who die and who live and how this whole thing ends up.
Yeah.
It hasn't ended yet. We don't know. All could be a setup to lull you to sleep, and then they hit you with the worst. I mean, look at some of the HBO shows in the past. The Sopranos had one of the most angering endings anybody's ever remembered for such a great show. I mean, I hope they don't go out like that. I'd almost rather take the Pat ending, where at least it's resolved over something like that. They pull some stunt like that. But
No, I think we're all good. I'm just looking forward to the all hell breaking loose next week, which I know it will.
The death count, the slaughter.
Slaughter begins.
Where everyone.
I want to count the moments of redemption that are going to happen. There's going to be a bunch, I think. The last stands in the moment and the redemption moments.
Really, you want to take us out?
Yeah. So thanks for watching again. We'll be back next week with episode 3, which obviously is going to be the Battle of Winterfell. There's going to be a lot to talk about next week. So thanks for watching. And again, make sure you go to our Facebook page and like us. You can hit us up on Twitter at Cantina Club 78. Also stop by our YouTube page and make sure you make some comments, like us, and subscribe to us. And we will see you next time. Thanks for watching, guys.
Solo always does shots first. Singing yup no. Yup yup. Singing yup no. Chucha. Yup no. No. At the cantina.
One last thing I want to say that might encapsulate my point of view. It's hard to go from a medium that's full of characters you love to hate to where they tell you these are characters you're never just supposed to love. I think that's my problem. Is I'm missing the hate. I live off of hate. I can feel it swelling in your now.